Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. A couple of days ago, I did the video on the GERS report, which showed government's expenditure and receipts. And it showed that the S&P were about 19 billion deficit. That is to say, their earnings were a lot less than their spending. And had they got rid of oil and gas, it would be nearly 30 billion pounds difference. And we commented on how mindless the idea of getting rid of the oil and gas fields were, and how this report, which has come from the Scottish Government itself, shows how independence is in fact almost impossible for Scotland to deliver. It would be utterly appalling. The country would be bankrupted within the first year. Well, we're going to do a follow-up on that now, because we're going to look at a couple of particular examples, and most particularly the pay rises that he feels freely able to offer, simply because he knows that someone else is picking up the tab. And it goes to show how much trouble the SNP would be in if ever they won the independence battle. How much trouble they'd be in. How much trouble the people of Scotland would be in would be more like it. Anyway, here goes. So, GERS Day pay rise for junior doctors exposes the truth behind SNP's fantasy economics. It's very quiet, it's very easy to do what you're doing when you know that even if you overspend, mummy is there to pick up the tab. In this case, mummy being the Westminster government, who will, of course, pay for all your overspending. It's what you do when you have an overindulgent parent who puts up with your shit instead of telling you exactly what to do. You become a spoilt brat, don't you, Mr. Yousaf? Anyway, no wonder Scotland spends more than 19 billion more than is earned through taxes when you have a spendthrift nationalist Green coalition prepared to write blank cheques to be cashed by the UK Exchequer. It's nearly 20 billion pounds, and it'd be nearly 30 billion without oil. How the hell do they think they're going to run a country? The latest annual GERS report and the 17.5% pay deal agreed with Scottish junior doctors are both linked to the public purse. Only in Scotland could such a bumper pay rise be awarded on the same day as the country is revealed to have the biggest deficit in Europe. And that line alone, the biggest deficit in Europe, is why Scotland will never be allowed to join the EU. They have very strict rules about deficits. And they ain't getting in. And so any talk of an independent Scotland is pie in the sky. And any talk of an independent Scotland ever joining Europe is fantasy of the wildest sort. The GERS report is always a tough day for the Nats, which is why some years ago the administration shifted the publication date from March to the middle of August, which more or less is a dead zone as far as political news is concerned. Yeah, they do it in August so that they can't be held accountable in Holyrood, because if it came out in August, in March, when they're in the middle of debating something, wherever it all released, bang, they'd be attacked. By doing it in the middle of August when there's no one there, they're hoping that people have calmed down and forgot about it by the time they resume back in September. It's a cynical attempt at hiding bad news, and boy, was the GERS report bad news. Bad news for the country, but terrible bad news for the SNP, because it goes to show that independence is never affordable. Anyway, the wisdom of such a sneaky strategy has been proved yet again today, as the Scottish Government's own economists rode a coach and horses through the SNP's plans for independence by illustrating the enormous fiscal benefits of the union, and we covered that left, right and centre in the previous video. So we're not thankfully it doesn't go in too much here, it just gives you the numbers and then we move on. Public spending in Scotland was 19 billion higher than the tax income last year, resulting in a national deficit that is the equivalent of 9% of GDP. Italy had the highest deficit in the EU in 2021 at 8%. Scotland and Italy share many historic links, although even the most fervent separatist would surely admit that the Italians have the edge when it comes to cuisine and climate. But this is one comparison we can do without. Yeah, I mean, you don't want to be compared to Italy in terms of deficit, and even they have reduced theirs this year. So this is why this Scotland in Europe thing is a load of old guff. It can never, ever happen. And then you add on the fact that Spain won't let you in anyway. Anyway, while still devastating for Skexiteers, the GERS figures are actually a considerable improvement on previous years. And this is largely due to a bumper year of tax receipts from North Sea oil and gas. This shows the utter folly of SNP and Labour proposals to close down the industry as soon as possible in pursuit of this mythical net zero, which is not only impossible, but is in fact dangerous. And you can close Scotland down and make everyone starve to death and it would make no difference whatsoever. And if you close those oil fields, you're still going to need oil. You've now just got to pay someone else to get it and to transport it halfway around the world. It's madness. Meanwhile, public spending per head in Scotland remains some 2,217 higher than the UK. And this is where the junior doctors come in. Medics down south are engaged in their 5th round of strikes, and the number of cancelled operations is expected to top 1 million this week as a result. Indeed, we had some personal problems this week with a relative of mine not finding out results because the doctors were on strike. Unfortunately for people in England, the UK government can't afford to just write blank cheques for public sector pay deals like the SNP can. Apparently, Michael Matheson was able to find the 61.3 million down the back of the sofa to fund this pay rise. He simply looked, said we can't afford it, but we'll do it anyway, and whatever's left, the UK government in Westminster will pay it. No doubt that will be used to cash-strapped councils who have to scrap services they can no longer afford, or homeowners who are being asked to pay to replace their perfectly good gas boilers with useless heat pumps. Of course, when push comes to shove, the SNP can always find the money for its pet projects, such as the millions wasted on overseas offices or independence planning. And we've covered both of those. Millions upon millions on embassies all around the world, when Scots abroad can quite easily use the British Embassy. But the SNP don't want that to happen because they're retarded wankers. This is because the Nats don't actually have to balance the books every year and can afford to go on spending far more than is earned because of the broad shoulders of the UK. The biggest deficit in Europe, never mind, have a 17.5% pay rise. It is fantasy economics that would come crashing down in a heartbeat if Scotland ever became independent. And he knows it. And ultimately they all know it. Which is why the SNP is a lie. They sit there, they clamour for they clamour for Scottish independence from the UK, and they know that the very first thing, the single very first thing that would happen is that they would be a failed state, bankrupt, unable to afford anything. Whatever national currency they invented would be worth nothing. It would be worth absolutely nothing. It'd be a Scottish pound would be worth pennies within weeks because he isn't bright enough to control it. None of them are. And you can tell they're stupid because they joined the SNP. I'm coming up. Now we know you have the wild-eyed, foaming at the mouth SNP supporters who, if Nicola Sturgeon went out and was slaughtering babies, would still vote for her because independence and we hate England. But there are enough, I think, in the SNP who aren't complete retards. These are voters we're on about. There are enough people who vote SNP because they really want independence. But then they look at these numbers now and they went, okay, we've got to accept we can't do it. And so they may stop voting for the SNP. Have a look around. If you're one of them, if you're one of those SNP voters who's not entirely stupid and can see that an independent Scotland would be bankrupt, poverty-stricken, miserable, mass unemployment, a horrible, horrible place to live, with a hard border. You couldn't just walk into England anymore. You'd need to apply for visas, and there's no guarantee that you'd get them. If that's what you want, keep voting SNP. But if it's not, then pick another party, and it doesn't matter who it is. The SNP are fails. They are fails in every single thing. By any metric, in every department, in every ministry, it's fail after fail after fail. And we can see from this GERS report that that is a fail when it's being backed by Britain. How worse will it be when that British backing isn't there? I shall stop there. Thank you very much for watching. If you like what you're seeing here on the channel, please hit the subscribe button, and I would ask all my regular viewers to do so. We need to spread the news. We need to get this out. We need to make sure more and more people know exactly what is going on, and I can only do that if you hit the subscribe button and the like button. So please, please do. Thank you very much anyway. Until next time, stay safe, stay well, and remember, while you're part of the union, you'll afford to eat. Outside of it, you'll starve. Bye.